this program changed my life. And yeah, I love this program. You know, I love the steps. I love the people in this program. I love my sponsor. Yeah. You know, I didn't know what to share, and then last night I had like this magical moment. You know, I spent a day yesterday with my family, and it was an amazing day. You know, and I just like sat in bed last night thinking, also to my step 11, you know, how grateful I am for this program, you know, and how it helped me deal with my resentments. Because if I was still in those resentments, there would be no love towards anyone. And yeah, that was like the story of my life. I was thinking of it this morning. You know, resentment was my number one offender, is my number one offender, and always will be my number one offender. But yeah, I guess quick story about me. When I was young, you know, my parents gave me everything. You know, they sent me to good schools. They tried everything for me. Alcoholism ran in my family from a young age. When I was young, my grandfather was a full-blown alcoholic, and you know, my dad was on his journey. And yeah, you know, life was good when I was younger. For me, when it all changed, you know, I went to an all-boys school in Durban, and for me, I used to fix all sports, and it was my way to be involved in people and stuff like that. I was always fearful from a very young age, and you know, when things changed in my life, you know, when I was 16 and I got diagnosed with rare skin disease, and I mean, I got bumps all over my face, and I was in an all-boys school, and you know, people started teasing me. People I thought were my friends, they started teasing me and bullying me, and I didn't know how to take it. You know, I remember going home extremely angry, and in grade 11 for a term, my parents pulled me out of school, and I sat at home by myself all the time, and I used to cry myself to sleep. You know, with grade 11 and grade 12 every night. I didn't know how to deal with life, and that's when I think my disease started. You know, my disease for me started before I started alcohol, drinking and drugs, and just sitting there and getting so resentful. You know, resentful towards God, resentful towards people, resentful towards my family, and yeah, I built those cases in those 2 years of why I must do what I must do. And I remember leaving school, and you know, that's when my behavior got out of hand. That's when the drinking started. I remember my first drink. I remember my first drug. I remember the times I took my first drug and my first drink, all of the drugs, and I can picture it clearly. And those were like, I can say this, those were good nights. I was like, oh, that was an amazing night. But that's my thinking, you know. I'm like, oh, that was an amazing night. But then, you know, when I play the story of how it didn't turn out to be amazing, you know, I got to remind myself of that all the time. And yeah, in varsity, I was in varsity for 4 years, and I only done a 2-year course in those 4 years. I failed, like I couldn't pass, especially accounting economics. I hated it, but it didn't help. I was goofed all the time in class, and I was drinking hard. So that's when after varsity, I took my first geographical. I went to London for a year, and I got there and nobody knew me, and I could just be whoever I wanted to be, and I thought that was awesome. And I jawed most of the nights, and I guess that's when my life started becoming unmanageable. At the time I didn't see it, because I thought I was just like living the best life, you know. But yeah, some months I missed rent, and I lived with this Zimbabwean couple, like such good people, but I treated them like shit, and that was the story of my life. You know, everyone that was good to me, I treated them like shit, and then my life, I came back because, you know, London became the problem. the jaws there were a problem. You know, the lifestyle was a problem, and came back here and I remember I moved back into my parents' place, and whilst I was in London, they just as like selfish I was, they brought in a girl into a house. They fostered her and you know, she didn't have a family, anything, and you know I came back and I met her and stuff like that, and we fell in love. And you know, I remember breaking the news to my parents and breaking the news to my friends, and every single person told me, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, this is the worst thing you can possibly do." And I remember listening to them and thinking, I'm like, "Oh no, I'll show you guys. You know, she's going to fix me. I'll fix her, and that'll be it." And then I moved out the house with her. My parents didn't speak to me for a year, and I didn't care. I did not care one bit. And at the same time, I got into the career that I'm in now, and you know, for 3 years, like, life was good, because I had a job. You know, I had a chick, and you know, everything's going to work out. And then in the 4th year, you know, I caught her cheating on me, and at the same time, I lost a friend at work, one of my best friends, and I remember just getting so resentful. For me, I believe in trauma, and I believe in depression as well, because I suffered from depression from a young age. But I also believe that as an alcoholic, you know, I weaponized the word depression, and I used it against people to get what I wanted, and I made everyone feel sorry for me. You know, because also I'm a very self-piteous person, still to this day, and I remember those two things happened at the exact same time, and I didn't know how to deal with life, and that's when I started using hard. You know, I just didn't want to feel anything, and I thought that was the way to live. You know, just numb myself, and you know, everything's going to be okay, and I didn't care whose expense it was, as long as I'm okay. And you know, I spent that year, you know, I didn't work, and I went to 3 psych wards in that year. It was the same psych ward I went to 3 times. You know, I loved the psych ward. They introduced me to meds, and I could just chill there and sit on the TV and sit on the bed, watch TV, order food. I thought it was the best thing ever. I didn't go there to get better, just to get my family off my back. After the first time, I realized, hey, it works, and you know, every time I went back there, I was just getting worse and worse and worse, and you know, I carried those resentments with me throughout my life, and especially the self-pity, like, why did this have to happen to me? And you know, I always thought I was special and different. But after that year, I went on another geographical, went to Vietnam for a year, and yeah, it's you know, Vietnam was good because I got to a new place, and once again I could be whoever I wanted to be, and thought I'd live like a king there. And the first time I ever realized in my life that I had a problem was in Vietnam. I was there like on the 10th month, and you know, we went away. Me and my 2 housemates went away to a coastal city, and I went there to stop drugs, and you know, I did it, but I drank every night. But I was like, I carried on every night. Like, I thought it was, no, I'm better now. I'm okay. And I remember being there, arriving in this coastal city within an hour, and a guy walked past me, and he was like, "Hey, I'm selling coke." And I was like, "Oh yes, you haven't had coke for 10 months, you know." I got to spoil myself. And then, you know, get me 2 bags, and he went. I gave money. He went off. He came back, gave it to me, and I went straight to the hotel room. And then I opened it and I saw it was like light brown, and I was like, shit, this is not coke, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, you don't get coke, yeah, you get heroin, and this is heroin. And my whole life, like, I promised myself, like, I would never, ever, ever do heroin, and it's completely against my morals. It's completely against everything that I thought of myself, and that thought like lasted like about half a minute, because then all of a sudden I was like, yo, I bought these drugs and I'm going to use them, and I did, and I can't remember most of that first night. I woke up the next morning, coaching, and my two friends were angry with me because I ruined their nights, and then they went back home, and I sat there in that hotel room for the next 2 days, carried on using, and I thought I was going to die, and I had a moment, and I just thought to myself, this is not normal. Like, how can I make this big promise to myself and go completely against everything that I ever thought was right, and here I am. So what I did was I went back home, I phoned my mom. My mom was always my get out of jail free card, and I was like, Vietnam's a problem, I'm struggling here, and then she got me tickets and I was back home. And that was the beginning of 2020, and beginning of lockdown. And I came back home to my parents' place, and all the drugs I went to Vietnam to escape. As I got home, I went straight to the dealer and I was straight back on them, and that's like I said, lockdown. That didn't work, and I was using it on a daily basis, and that's when I stole, like, throughout my life. But that year I started stealing, and the lying and manipulation that comes with it, and I just remember waking up like every morning in that last year. At that year I was thinking, I'd stopped trying to give up. I thought using till I die was my purpose, and I was like, I'm going to just carry on using, and I don't want to stop. And I was like, I'm not going to stop, because I've tried many things and nothing's worked. So maybe this is what God has planned for my life, is to just use. And I just remember waking up every morning, if I did wake up, if I wasn't just still awake from the night before, and just thinking of how I'm going to manipulate my mom for money, and what I'm going to steal, and then going forward with it, doing it, and then going to either the second-hand shop, pawning whatever I stole, and then I remember getting my drugs. And as I got them, I was already thinking of what I'm going to steal or what lie I'm going to use next to get the next fix. That complete obsession. That's all that I worried about. That's all that I thought about, and it was always at my parents' expense. Because I've stopped being around people. I have two good friends, like, growing up, and all three of us are addicts and alcoholics. So I'll say addicts, I don't care, it's not what I am. But yeah, I avoided people, and that's when my life started spiraling out of control. I stopped eating, and I stopped just taking care of myself, and flipping, just physically abusing my dad to get what I wanted, and mentally abusing my mom to get what I wanted. And me and my dad didn't talk in that last year, in the whole of lockdown, because he was an alcoholic, and I resented him for being an alcoholic, and we just fought all the time. And I stopped drinking I think 15 months before I came into this program, but I'll get to that. And then I just remember what brought me to this program was my parents went to Cape Town for 2 weeks, and they gave me quite a lot of money just so I didn't steal stuff from their house to go sell, because they called me many times, and And then I manipulated them, like, to someone, if you don't give me money, I'm going to go steal something of yours, like hold her hostage. And I remember them going to Cape Town for 2 weeks and them leaving money. And after that first week, I ran out of money, and I was like, okay, I've got to find something to steal now. And I went to their safe. My thinking was, I can't steal something from around the house because that's the first thing they're going to look at when they get home. And I went to the safe and I stood there for like 2 days, trying all the passwords, and then I got it. And I got into the safe, and I remember opening the safe, and the first thing I saw was a gold bracelet. And I saw that thing, and I was like, flipping, that must mean something to my family, because it's in the safe, and it looked old, looked expensive. I was like, sure, maybe I shouldn't take that, but like 5 seconds later, I'm taking it because it's going to give me money for drugs. And I went to the pawn shop, and the guy looked at it, and he offered me a lot of money for that bracelet. And first thing I remember thinking, I was like, this is, pawn shops don't give you shit for your stuff, like they give you hardly anything. And he offered me a lot of money, and I was like, oh gosh, this must mean something to my family, must be valuable, but hey, I'm getting money for drugs. And sold it, and off I went to the dealer. And my parents came back from Cape Town, and they looked around the house, and nothing was missing, and they came to me, and they're like, oh, Mom was like, I'm proud of you, my boy. And and I was like, well, thank you should be. And it was weird because as I got back, I got COVID. And the ironic thing about it was I got COVID from my Nigerian dealer. Because those are the only two places I was going to those 2 weeks, was to the pawn shop and to my dealer. And I remember getting extremely sick, and my parents didn't look at the safe at the time, and I got extremely sick with COVID, and then I gave it to my parents. And my parents were like man down. I remember my dad, like I thought he was going to die, and I sat there in so much guilt and shame. I was like, imagine something happens to my parents, and it's from me going to my dealer, getting it from my dealer. And that guilt and shame became very overwhelming, and those 2 weeks went past, and then the 2 weeks that my parents had it, they had to stay in their room and stuff like that, and then they came out, and then I think this was the biggest God moment of my life. Well, I've had a lot of God moments, but at the same time, my brother's fiance was pregnant, and my brother asked me to be the godfather of his child. Because me and my brother, we like best friends, we've always had each other's back, we're killed for each other, and he asked me, and I was like, this is such a big responsibility. I can't let him down. And then I accepted it, and then I remember promising myself, okay, from now, I'm stopping using, I'm stopping stealing, I'm stopping everything, and it didn't stop. It just carried on. Like that was probably the biggest promise I made to myself, and I couldn't honor that promise. And after a while, my parents, when my brother's daughter was born, I didn't go see her. I promised myself I'd be the best role model, best person I could be for her, and I didn't go see her. And after like 2 weeks, my parents came to me and they're like, Byron, where's the gold bracelet? And then I was like, what gold bracelet are you talking about? I denied it as per norm. And then they're like, no, this is we know you stole it, where is it? And I was like, I didn't steal it. And I remember asking them, what is it? And my mom said, it was our family emblem. My grand gave it to my dad on her deathbed and said, give this gold bracelet to your first grandchild, which was my brother's daughter, my goddaughter. And when I heard that, I couldn't believe what I'd done. I destroyed my family many times, but at that moment in time, I was like, what have I done? And I've heard a saying in recovery, an alcoholic will steal something and deny they stole it. An addict will steal something and help you look for it. and that's what I did. I caught the whole. I've got a big family in Soweto. All my aunts and uncles and cousins all stay there, and I caught a search party. I called them all to my parents' place. Like, we're going to find this thing, and for like 3 days we looked. I helped them look, and I knew exactly where it was. And in those 3 days, that guilt and the shame, the drugs and alcohol used to numb that guilt and the shame for me, but it wasn't at that moment in time. Everything stopped, and I remember going to my mom, and I was like, on the third day, and I was saying, listen, I stole it, I sold it, not going to get it back. I need help, and I need help now. And then my dad was like, my dad hated me, I hated him. It was a mutual hatred. And he's like, get out the house. And my mom was like, thank God for my mom, she's such a sweet lady. And she's like, no, we're going to get him help. And it was weird how things like God started working from there. I'll never forget, 6 months before I came into treatment, I had a friend who got kicked out of, one of my best friends growing up, and to this day, he got kicked out of his parents' place, and he came to stay with me and my buddies, and after the first night of staying there, we were both using, we were both fucked, and I remember thinking to myself, like, yo, 2 of us in one place, this is not going to be good. And I told him to pack his bags. I kicked him out. I went to his mom's work, pulled his mom out of work, and was like, I remember telling him, like, hey, your son's got a problem and he needs help. He needs to go back to rehab. And she went and fetched him and took him to rehab. And when I asked for help, my mom phoned his mom, and his mom said there's only one place that your son's going, and that's up to Cedars, up to the house on the hill, and then my mom mentioned this place, and then it was a Wednesday, and then said, okay, going tomorrow, and I was like, yeah, I need help, but I'm not going tomorrow. I'm going my own terms. And it was my dad's birthday that Saturday, and I still hadn't, I'd seen my niece like once or twice. I was like, no, I need to be there for my dad's birthday, and I need to spend time with my niece before going. So I'll go on Monday. And the rest of the week, I didn't see my niece. I didn't go to my dad's birthday. I just sat in the room using, and yeah, I'll never forget the day. One of the ladies who fetched me, she celebrated her 10-year milestone the other day, and it just brought me back to that day. She came to fetch me with Rob. I'll never forget that day. I just finished my last bag, and I was standing in the driveway, smoking a joint, and then they pulled in, and then they came an hour early. I wasn't expecting that. And then I remember Rob was like, hey Byron, we had to fetch you. And I was like, just give me 5 minutes. And I thought he'd be pissed off with me, but then he was like, just do what you need to do. And then I remember coming inside, and then I had, I love fish tanks, and I breed fish. And then I was introducing him to all my fish. Because in the last year of using those with my friends, it was my fish. I used to go in the garage and go into the different rooms and speak to the fish, and it was insane. But yeah, they took me up to the house on the hill, and that place changed my life there. God brought me there for a reason, and it was the 12-step facility. I knew nothing of the 12 steps. They said I had to say that I'm alcoholic. It took me a really long time to say that I'm alcoholic, because I hated alcoholics because of my dad and my grandfather. And I was like, I'm not an alcoholic. Yeah, maybe I'm an addict because I've been using drugs, but alcoholic, no, not a chance. And I was extremely resentful when I got there as well. I was resentful at my parents for sending me for help after I've asked them for help. And I didn't trust anybody. I didn't like dealing with people. I was in myself, in my self-pity as well. And for the first month there, I didn't want anything to do with anyone. And I just stuck to myself, and I thought that this is a good coping mechanism. Just sticking to myself, and life's easier that way and stuff, but it's not. And I realized that in treatment. And I never, like I said, God brought me to there for a reason, and I got introduced to my sponsor there. Still my sponsor to this day, and I freaking love him. And I remember one of my first conversations with him, and then he told me, you're gonna have to trust God. And I looked at him in the eyes and I was like, it's not happening, bro. And then he was like, okay, well, you're gonna have to trust me. And I was looked at him, I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. But in my mind, I was like, it's not happening, bro. And I went on my way, and like for 2 or 3 days, I was like, I've got nothing to lose because I've like lost everything. And let me just start like trusting and listening to him, And he told me his story, and I was like, lots of similarities. And I was like, okay, flipping, this looks like okay, and he just wants what's best for me. So let me just give it a go, and I did, I was actually thinking, like looking around this room, I struggled with people, and like Fundo's here, and he was like my first friend in recovery, and my first friend in a really long time at my men's time. We used to sit in the room at the back there and listen to music and feed the donkeys ghost pops. If you didn't feed them ghost pops, they'd eat your clothes. And it's like seeing him in this meeting, there's so much God, and I was there for just under 4 months and a half in the treatment center, and I went to the halfway house for like a year. And I remember getting to the halfway house, and I love the halfway house. The halfway house changed my life. I'll put it just simple as that. It really did. Just being surrounded by flipping good people, Much easier. She's a bit of a headache at times, but I love everyone. I love everyone from the halfway house, and I remember in the halfway house I worked at a coffee shop, coffee lounge, and I remember being in the coffee lounge and just making enough to barely scrape through. My parents are still paying for my everything. They're still paying for my rent. They was for my food, because we didn't get paid a lot at the halfway house. But at the coffee lounge, and I was just thinking to myself, all I wanted to do was like to make amends. Amends for me is a big thing to my family. It's probably my everything. And I remember just thinking to myself all the time, I want to pay my parents back. When will time come? And they're still paying for me. And my sponsor always said, and lots of people in this program have said, if you keep doing the right things will happen. And this is the action program. And after that, after the halfway house, I started volunteering, and I loved every second of it. I met up here, and then I went to the Midlands, and I met some of the best people that I know up in the Midlands. James was there with me as my roommate. We had this faulty dog. He gave us a lot of growth, and I loved every second of it. Even I was thinking the other day. For me, one of the main things is when I commit to something, I give it my all. like I throw myself in, and what I believe is sometimes you got to be a bit selfish in this program, and you got to think about yourself. But at first, no, but kept moving on, you do. Like, you got to think of your rest and stuff. And I remember being up in the Midlands. It was a Saturday morning. I'll never forget it. And we were doing it was like playing games with the guys. And I was so tired, and I hadn't taken time off. And Mon over there, she's just flipping, she's like, you need to get rest, boy. And I was like, fuck. And I'll never forget that conversation, because I was fucked. I had nothing, no energy, I had nothing to offer anyone. And then I was like, yo, and like for me, God speaks to people in this program. And He really does. And, something small like that. And I was like, I do that to this day. I dedicate time for rest. And for like simple things like self-love and self-care is a huge thing. Something I did not do my whole life. And I thought I was selfish, but there was no, like, it's different now. And just to move on, one thing I want to share as well is when I was in the halfway house, I went into hospital for 6 weeks. Which was the story of my life. I spent 2 months of each year since I was 16 in hospital, and it was dangerous for me because I was with myself, and that's when the self-pity and the came affecting me the most. And I went to the hospital, and I remember getting there. I was like, thank God, I'm away from recovery, I'm away from the halfway house. I need this. And it was really nice, because every day I was in hospital, someone from this fellowship came and visited me, which showed me the love of this program. And one of my life-changing moments in recovery was on the second day I got into hospital. I was sitting in the hospital bed, and I heard this loud English voice. And I'll never forget this, because this moment probably changed my life. And I was like, flip, I know this voice, it can't be. So then I was like, let me go look. And then this guy was making a fuss about his tea. And I went into the room next door, and I saw Keith there. And, he had his earphones in, and he was listening to AA share. And he had this sober and sobriety book next to him. It's a black book. And I remember just looking at him, and I was like, fuck, this is how this oak is sober for so long. Doing the right thing when no one's looking. And he was like 37 years sober at the time. And I was like, he doesn't need to do this. And then I was like, but he does, that's why he's there. And just looking at his actions, like, he didn't say anything. I just looked, and I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, hey, Keith. And he was like, oh, Byron. And I was like, what are you listening to? And he's like, no, it's a share, you got to listen to it. And I'll never forget this share. Like, it's the history of AA by Jim Burwell. And I remember going to the room and listening to the share, and then in that share he said, he says that in the first 6 months of AA, many people were coming and many people were going. And there were only 8 people that stayed sober. And those 8 people were all involved in service. And I remember listening to that, and I was like, fuck, now I've got to be of service. That's one thing I love about this program, is being of service in more ways than one. Not even in this program, just making about people in general. And leaving the Midlands. My time in the Midlands, I loved it. I loved the people there, but I became extremely resentful there. Extremely resentful. Because I had expectations. And my expectations weren't getting met, and then I started losing, like I just inside, if you know what resentment's like, inside, building cases against people for no known reason, and I became extremely resentful, and on top of being burnt out most of the time, the resentments burned me out even more, and I was tired, and I was hating life, and I became very scared. Very, very scared, because I heard people before me you say, like if you resent all the time and it leads to one thing, and that's picking up. And I was like, flip, if I don't deal with this, I'm going to freaking end up picking up. And I remember phoning my sponsor and him telling me, one suggestion and that's that you leave. And I remember telling him on the phone, yes, it's a brilliant idea. And down the phone, and I didn't leave. I stayed there for like another month and a half. Because I had this big idea, like this is the rest of my life, and I didn't want to let go, surrender that. And after the month and a half, I was driving down to Durban, and I was in so much pain. I was so scared, and I stopped at the Engine One stop in Camperdown, and I got out the car in the parking lot, and I phoned my sponsor, and I was like, listen, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. And he was like, well, I've given you the suggestion. And at that moment in time, I think I was ready for that suggestion. In the parking lot, just cars everywhere, people everywhere. I was on the phone and I was crying. But that was like the complete form of surrender, and I'll never forget that day. And then it's weird how God worked, because that was a Friday, and on the Saturday, one of the ladies from this fellowship came up to the Midlands to share at an NA rally, and her topic was fear. And I was sitting in so much fear of what's going to happen now. And she shared in fear and how to have faith. That moment, after that share, I was like, going to have faith in this program and everything's going to be okay. And there was another lady also from this fellowship who had to leave what she was doing, and she had to go on another journey, and she was sharing about faith all the time. And there's so much God in that. And then I had to go. My sponsor gave me another 2 suggestions, and these these 2 suggestions are 2 things, the only 2 things I promised myself coming to this program, and that was moving back in with my parents and going back to my old career. And my sponsor gave me both of the suggestions at the same time, and then I was like, no, this is not happening. And then once again I was like, well, got nowhere to stay. I'm not doing anything, so let's just give it a shot. And I didn't have work for a month and a half. But what I'd done in those month and a half was I came to a meeting every day, and I tried to be in service wherever I could. And just knowing that if I'm doing the right thing will happen. And I'll never forget. It was a Monday afternoon, and that whole weekend. I think it was a convention or something on the Saturday, and then that whole weekend was just recovery. And I remember praying as well on the Monday. When I got a phone call from a friend. He was like, hey, listen, you need to send your email to this lady. She's looking for someone. And I emailed the lady, and she's like, oh, flipping, I'm grateful you emailed me because we're looking for someone ASAP. Can you be at this place at 4 tomorrow morning? I was like, yes, I'll be there. And off I went. And for me, there was so much God. I don't know how to explain this, but in my trade thing I do, there's only one oil and gas company in South Africa, and they only employ eight people in that trade, and I got a job there. And I got there and I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to do, so what I do when I don't know what to do is I make people coffee. And I ask about their family. I always do that, actually, still to this day, is make coffee and ask. I love the family and constant things. And then I started working there, moved back with my parents, and my dad was drinking heavily. And it was a lot of acceptance there. Showing love and compassion, and I started to make financial amends, which was a huge thing for me. I started to be able to give back, and and you know, I still got a lot of it to do. I still a lot from my family, and yeah, I think one of the most amazing things that's happened for me is my second trip away this year. On the first day I got there, you know, since I got into recovery, I just wanted my family to get better, and on the first of the second trip, my dad messaged me and he said he needs help, and typical of my dad, he said he's going to a psych ward, and then I was like, fuck the psych. And I to my mom, I was like, hey, listen, you know what the psych ward done to me, and there's only one place he needs to go. And she's like, yes. She knows, and then she phoned one of the guys up in the Midlands, and then he got my dad into the South Coast facility, and you know, that's been the biggest blessing of my recovery was that moment, and how our family's changed from this program is amazing. I remember one of the conversations I had with my dad when I got back home, and like my dad had a big resentment towards his dad, and I also resented my granddad. And my dad told me, he was like, hey, you know, I resented my dad for being an alcoholic. And I was like, oh, likewise. And you know, we were like, my dad was like, told me, he's like, do you know how lucky we are I found this, you know? Like, we had the chance to try to change our lives, and my grandfather didn't have that. He just drank himself to death. And you know, that I'll never forget that conversation. And yeah, it's this last year's just been, there's been so much God in it, so much God. It's weird. I can wake up in the mornings, I still stay with my folks, and I love it. Like I love being with my family. For that, they were on the top of my men's list from when I was doing my steps, and they'll always be on top of my men's list. And yeah, it's like my day is recovery, but it's a lot of family. You know, when I wake up in the mornings, it's me and my dad. We do the readings and we'll chat about it. And my dad's taught me more than I thought I was going to teach us like everything, but he's taught me much more. So I speak to my sponsor and stuff, and then I'm like, fuck, I need to speak to my sponsor. And it's weird how it worked like that. And yeah, just being able to, you know, video call my brother, and every day without fail, I make sure I speak to my brother and to my niece, and you know, just like small moments like that, you know, it just makes me realize that this program's amazing. And from like 3.5 years ago to now, I didn't expect any of this. Even though I do always have a lot of expectations, I didn't think it would be like this. But there's only one reason, and that's God. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it there. Well, thanks for letting me share.